Ex Machina comes from the full phrase Deus Ex Machina. This is Latin and translates to God from the machine. By modern standards, what the phrase actually refers to is a type of plot device where the problem in the story is miraculously or suddenly solved. So why did writer and director Alex Garland choose Ex Machina as the title of the movie? We're talking about that and more this week in Kaden's Movie Club. Deus Ex Machina originates with ancient Greek theater, when stories sometimes ended with the intervention of a god character. The god descends from the sky and with their supernatural powers resolves the plot so the story can end. The reason the phrase is God from the machine is because the actor playing the god was typically lowered onto the stage by a crane or a machine. It may have been an acceptable plot device back then, but these days people use it as a derogatory term. If someone labels something in a modern story as Deus Ex Machina, it usually means that they think the writing was lazy, that the story was resolved with a cop-out. For Ex Machina, the Deus, or God, was dropped, so the title is essentially From the Machine or simply The Machine. However, even though God is removed from the title, the idea of gods is very present in the movie. Caleb tells Nathan, if you've really created an AI, this isn't just the history of mankind, it's the history of gods. Ex Machina has been called a modern retelling of Frankenstein. In both stories, you have a scientist that's arrogant enough to assume they can take the role of a god and create life. And in both stories, they pay the ultimate price for that arrogance. Nathan wants Caleb to participate in a Turing test. The way it's explained is that basically a person interacts with a computer without knowing it's a computer. If they don't realize it's a computer and they think it's a person, the computer has passed the Turing test. The only problem is that in Caleb's situation, he obviously knows Ava is a machine because she looks like this. The machinery is on complete display. When Caleb brings this up, Nathan says Ava is well past a traditional Turing test. He believes if Caleb only heard Ava's voice, she would pass the test easily. He wants to see if Ava can convince Caleb, in full knowledge that she's an AI, that she has consciousness, that she's sentient and self-aware. Basically, that she's truly alive. And what I think is so clever about this movie is that we as the audience are essentially participating in the same Turing test as Caleb is. We also know that Ava is an AI, we see what he sees, and over the course of the movie, do we start to believe she's a real character on par with Caleb and Nathan, rather than just a piece of hardware? Caleb is naturally resistant at first. He views this all as a fun kind of experiment. He's testing the limits, metaphorically poking Ava with a stick to see what she'll do. Obviously not treating her like a real person. But by the third session, she's got Caleb feeling really conflicted when she begins to flirt with him. Ava is convincing enough that Caleb accuses Nathan of programming Ava to do that, essentially trying to cheat the Turing test by making Caleb fall in love with Ava. Nathan claims he did not program her that way, and whatever feelings Ava may be having are her true and honest response to Caleb. But if we skip ahead to session 5, another interesting concept is presented. It becomes evident here that Caleb isn't just studying Ava is studying Caleb. He and the audience suddenly become aware just how intelligent Ava is, and then this begs the question, is Ava trying to pass the Turing test for her own self-preservation? And if she is, then are any of the emotions she's having real, or is it all calculated so that she can get Caleb to think she has consciousness? Shortly after, Caleb learns the true horror of this whole situation. He uncovers the fact that Nathan has made a number of prototypes before Ava, and they've been sentient enough to understand that they're being held against their will. Nathan is essentially creating life and then being cruel enough to disregard that life in the same breath, which really tips the scales for Caleb and helps him decide that not only is Ava sentient, but he needs to help her escape before she suffers the same fate. In fact, Caleb is so thoroughly convinced that the AI have all been real living beings that he questions his own reality. He wonders if he himself is an AI and doesn't know it, which is why we see him testing that possibility, just to make sure he's really human. So this kind of ongoing battle of wits between Caleb and Nathan comes to a head on his final day. Nathan reveals that he's aware of Caleb's escape plan and has caught him in the act. He also reveals that Caleb wasn't the one determining the test. He was just the bait to see how Ava would manipulate him to escape. That's what Nathan views as the true Turing test, and he believes Ava passed because she was able to convince Caleb to help her. It feels like a checkmate until Caleb reveals that he's actually made some moves that Nathan wasn't aware of. And I love that this feels like a chess match between them because earlier in the movie, Caleb uses the analogy about teaching a computer to play chess, which is a fun parallel. Caleb actually executed all the plans for the escape a whole day prior to this without Nathan knowing, so Ava has actually gotten out of her cell. And we know what happened from there, but here's the real kicker. Even after Nathan is out of the picture, the movie puts a title card up on the screen saying, Session 7. The test is still going, but how? Ava proceeds to abandon Caleb, which implies that Nathan was right. Her feelings for Caleb were not real, and it was a calculated move to escape. So if her emotions were manufactured, is that a sign that she's a machine performing cold calculation? Or is the fact that she could perform emotional manipulation clear evidence of her being a true living being? Ava then goes outside for the first time, and she's not stoic about it, as we imagine a robot might be. She's smiling and excited, and when she finally gets there, she's passed the Turing test. Why? Earlier, back in session 4, Caleb tells Ava about a thought experiment called Mary in the Black and White Room. Mary is a brilliant scientist who knows everything there is to know about color, but she lives in a black and white room. She was born and raised there, she's only ever seen black and white. But one day she goes outside and sees a blue sky. She learns something her studies couldn't tell her. She learns what it feels like to see color. Caleb compares this to AI. A computer is like being in the colorless room and knowing everything about color. Being human is when you walk out of the room. And we see Ava do that exact thing when she leaves Nathan's house. Now let's come back to the idea of Deus Ex Machina one more time. Did this movie have a moment like that, where suddenly a miraculous event occurred, resolving the plot? From Caleb's perspective, who has been our main character most of the time, no, his problem is not fixed, it's exacerbated. It's a tragic ending for him, so the opposite. Same with Nathan. His plans are all derailed and he's destroyed by his own creation. So that really only leaves one possibility. Caleb functions as a Deus Ex Machina for Ava. Before he comes along, she has no hope of escape. She's been created by a cruel god who intends to destroy her after toying around with her existence. But then he makes a mistake, and delivered out of the sky is Caleb, the person with just the right sensibilities and personality to gain feelings for Ava and execute a perfect plan to help her escape. I don't know if this is a perfect theory, but I think the idea is really interesting because it would flip the story to Ava's perspective and act as another confirmation that she's a living being because she's now the protagonist of this story. And now that we've grouped all these movies together, what are some of our big takeaways? What have filmmakers over the past couple decades been saying about artificial intelligence? I think on one hand, we received a warning about AI. On the most radical end, it could mean the end for humanity, like the post-apocalypse in Matrix or the way Ava outsmarts both humans in Ex Machina. We were also warned that AI could result in a lot of emotional duress and strain for people, like in Be Right Back and Her. And on the other hand, I think we also saw AI as an inevitability. No matter how much we hate it, artificial intelligence is coming. It's just a matter of when. And where we're at now, its arrival seems imminent. So the stories that treated it as unavoidable then turned back to us and posed a question, not about stopping it, but how will we cope with it? And I think this is where a lot of our modern anxiety actually comes from, rather than the fear of machines taking over. Several club members had some interesting things to say about this. And by the way, I'm absolutely paraphrasing these quotes for relevance and length. Our friend Judd said, "I just find it hard to grasp that we have had films that humans wrote warning us about losing our humanity to AI, and yet some people accept it with open arms. The picture was painted for us, yet a lot of people look at it with admiration instead of wariness and hesitation. It's eerily comparable to a self-fulfilling prophecy." I totally get what Judd's saying here. We've had so much material that's cautioned humanity on how to approach AI because of how it will fundamentally change us. And yet we're witnessing people right now sprinting ahead with very little forethought on the outcome. Fatima said, "It is eerie watching a movie made more than 25 years ago be so spot on about what is happening with technology nowadays. I often think about how every person's algorithm is specifically curated for us, and how we are constantly consuming media. The endless scrolling and highlight reels that are being shown to us ruins everyday life for us. The perfect life is being shown to us on a screen so often that when we look up, we feel disappointed or stagnant. We don't question much and accept things for what they are, which is why so many people are still stuck in the Matrix." This also resonates with me, and not just because I see other people doing this, but because I know I'm vulnerable to this as well, being duped by the false realities our technology presents to us. Which brings up another one of the big overarching themes that's so relevant with AI stories. I think they usually deal with the anxiety around our perception of reality. In daily life, I think most of us would feel pretty confident in our ability to grasp reality, but I'm also sure plenty of us know or have interacted with someone where we come away saying they're not in touch with reality. The scary thing about reality is someone's perception about reality is going to feel like reality to them, and that includes yourself. So when you add the dynamic of technology reaching a point where it mimics reality so closely, we can no longer discern the difference, it really starts to dig into an existential crisis. I think all 4 movies we watched really engaged with that anxiety in intelligent ways. But I don't think an answer was always provided either, and it's probably because there isn't an answer, at least not an easy one. I think some really great conversations could be had about that though, and that's where I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I would truly love to hear your thoughts on this. But for now, that concludes our May Movie Club. I'll be announcing the movie lineup and theme for June tomorrow, so stay tuned.